So now is our sacred time as we prepare to go into the service. For those of you that have a candle to light and can do so comfortably and safely, this is when we light our candle as we mentally and emotionally and spiritually prepare for this time together. Yeah, I can see that several of you have your candles. And if you're new to this Sunday afternoon gathering, then if you join us again, this is something that we do. We bring a candle and light it. And the lit candle represents the light within, the Christ light, the God light, our inner light, our spiritual light. And it's very symbolic. It's a little ritual that we have, one of the few that we have in Unity, but a very important one, to take a moment and to recognize that the light that the candle represents is but a mere fraction of the light that is here within us and around us and through us and as us. So let's take a moment just to witness on screen as much as you can, people's lovely smiling faces, your screens. We have one lady or gentleman joining us on the phone. But just take a moment to see each other, to really see each other, and not just the outer faces and names, but a deeper truth, the deeper light that is within us, that we can always access and call upon and recognize and utilize for the good for all. So to help with this gentleness, this winding down, this coming together, this getting into stillness, we're going to have a piece of music. It's called Surely the Presence, and it's a chorus that many of us sing in unity around the world.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel his mighty power and his grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel his mighty power and his grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
Thank you, Sally, for recording that for us and playing it. It's a wonderful way, and for those of us that used to attend Maidenhead, helps us get into stillness. So we're going to continue with this sense of stillness, of awareness of the presence, of going deeper within as we move into prayer. So let's take ourselves into the silence together, into a moment where we again get still and get present. If it helps to close your eyes or focus on your candle, please do so. Knowing that as we do this, we invite our minds to a deeper stillness. As we practice the psalm quote, "Be still and know that I am God," we find ourselves experiencing a greater stillness, and out of that, a greater peace and a greater joy. For here we experience God more fully, in us and through us and around us and as us. So as we feel into our awareness of God, physically in our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds, in our very being. We remember all those whom we hold in prayer. Our dear beloved Karen of Unity Birmingham. Any others that we are aware of, whether it's a healing need or something else. We draw them into this quiet time and know that God is their help, their health, their supply. We include all the names shared with Silent Unity. And we also include our world and all the news that we hear through the media in all its forms, the situation in the Middle East, and any situation that we're aware of. Every single person on this planet is a child of God, an expression of the divine beloved. So let us take a moment to draw them into our hearts, to enfold them in prayer. And so I invite you, if you're happy to do so, to open your eyes and return your awareness to the screen ahead of you, in front of you. And let's read out the prayer of faith written by Hannah More Cohouse, first as it's written as my help, and then secondly as our help. God is my help in every need. God does my every hunger feed. God walks beside me, guides my way through every moment of this day. I now am wise, I now am true, patient and kind and loving too. All things I am, can do and be, through Christ the truth that is in me. God is my health, I can't be sick. God is my strength, unfailing, quick. God is my all, I know no fear, since God and love and truth are here. God is our help in every need. God does our every hunger feed. God walks beside us, guides our way through every moment of this day. We now are wise, we now are true, patient and kind and loving too. All things we are, can do and be through Christ the truth that as in all of us. God is our health, we can't be sick. God is our strength, unfailing, quick. God is our all, we know no fear, since God and love and truth are here.
Our wonderful word for today is strength. And the affirmation, divine strength invigorates my body and quickens my mind. Let's just say that together. Divine strength invigorates my body and quickens my mind. If I feel my energy waning during a time of vigorous physical or mental activity, if my get up and go is got up and gone, I remember these inspiring words from the Prayer of Faith by Hannah More Cohouse. God is my strength, unfailing, quick. The strength of God is my strength, and it's more than sufficient to meet my every need. More than toughness or forcefulness, Spiritual strength is quiet fortitude, a rootedness in the inexhaustible wellspring of the divine. Today, I release all thought of weakness or impossibility. I feel the power of divine strength flowing through me, invigorating my body and bringing renewed clarity to my thoughts. The strength of God is my strength. And from 1 Corinthians, we read, "For God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength." Oh, these are beautiful and powerful words. Let's take a moment to imbibe them, to bask in them, to allow them into our consciousness and bathe our souls, our minds, our hearts in this blessed assurance that whatever the outer appearance, the inner truth is God's strength, is our strength, unfailing, quick. Let's make space within ourselves to feel that divine strength coursing through our veins, flowing out into our hearts, our minds. Our friends, our neighbors, our enemies, our communities, our world. And as we begin to come back into our room and back into our service, we can focus in on this amazing affirmation and say it together 3 times. Once for my, second for you, and third for our. So together, divine strength invigorates my body and quickens my mind. Divine strength invigorates your body and quickens your mind. Divine strength invigorates our bodies and quickens our mind. And so it is.
Now, Sally took us through the daily word beautifully. And I loved some of those words, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to repeat some of them. I'm not sorry, I am going to repeat some of them. God is my strength, unfailing, quick. The strength of God is my strength, and it's more than sufficient to meet my every need. Every need. Not just when I'm feeling that things are tough, but all the time, whenever. It's always there. And we'll kind of come back to that. But what I really loved is the middle section. And I know Sally read it twice, but you're going to get it a 3rd time. So, you know, you're getting a bonus today. More than toughness or forcefulness, spiritual strength is quiet fortitude, a rootedness in the inexhaustible wellspring of the divine. You know, the thing that sprang to my mind when I read that was the meek shall inherit the earth. I mean, the word meek is misinterpreted. It's thought as being weak, and it's not weak at all. Meek is that quiet inner strength, that real strength that we don't have to shout about. And interestingly, the Bible quote here from 1 Corinthians, I think it's always interesting to understand where the Bible quote came from. Paul had written to the Corinthians. It's 1 Corinthians, but it's not actually the first letter because it refers in there to a previous letter. So it's one of the letters that was written. And basically, they'd all started squabbling. It says, you know, people were saying to each other things like, I belong to Paul, or I belong to Apollos, or I belong to Cephas, Peter, or I belong to Christ. And frankly, Paul was turning around and saying, for goodness sake, get your act together. We all belong to Christ. That is the whole point. And he says, you know, the Jews are looking for signs, the Greeks are looking for wisdom, they're all looking for these things, but God is wiser than God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength. You know, why bother? You know, you don't need to look to ourselves. That's what we do all the time, isn't it? We look to our strength and our wisdom. Why? There's this great font of strength and wisdom we can draw on. We just have to move out of the way. Last weekend, we had a retreat, and I used an analogy that I actually quite like. I don't know where I got it from, but I like it as an analogy. If we imagine two rooms next to each other, in the one room is who I think I am, who I think I am. The next door room is Christ, this eternal font of power and strength. And we know that there's a door. I always used to think the door opened into the Christ. It doesn't. The door opens from the Christ into us, and it's us that's holding it shut. All we have to do is release, and it opens. And there it is. It's all there for us all the time if we just get ourselves out of the way. So my message this afternoon, not surprisingly after all that, is God is our strength. God is our strength, not me, God. God is my strength. I don't know how many of you have seen the film Dumbo. Wonderful cartoon, apparently the shortest cartoon that they ever produced. But in that cartoon, Dumbo, which I'm sure you're aware, is a young elephant born with big floppy ears. And some of the people around the circus where he is start taking the mickey out of him. So his mum goes around to give him a hard time and beat him up and defend him. So they lock her up because they say she's a mad elephant. And there's this young mouse, and it's wonderful, isn't it? It's the, you know, the elephant and the mouse. They always seem to go together. The elephants are supposed to be afraid of mice. But anyway, Dumbo loves this mouse, and Timothy the mouse loves Dumbo. So he looks after Dumbo, and they go to see Dumbo's mum, Jumbo, and they manage somehow to get drunk. And there's this wonderful scene of them getting drunk, and they wake up, and there's this scene where you've got telegraph wires, and they're bowed in the middle because Dumbo is sat on these things with big floppy ears with Timothy the mouse. Timothy the mouse is initially a bit confused, and then works out, Dumbo must have flown. Well, Dumbo's having none of it. But one of the crows who happens to be there pulls out a feather and says, hey, Dumbo, there's a magic feather. You can fly with the magic feather. Fly with the magic feather. How many times have we done that? We have a magic feather, don't we? Something we trust in this material world that makes us special. But the scene then changes to in the big tent. And there's all this stuff going on in the big tent. And Dumbo is going to do this big flying scene, and he's got his feather. I've never worked out whether Dumbo is actually a boy or a girl, but anyway, we won't worry about that. Dumbo's got his feather, leaps off to do this big flight, loses his feather. Loses his feather. I don't know if you've ever seen the sketch in Monty Python, where they had sheep nesting in trees. And in this sketch, the reporter goes up to interview the farmer and says, that's amazing, you've got sheep nesting in trees. Can they fly? And the farmer says, well, they don't so much fly as plummet. And this is what happened to poor Dumbo. Dumbo is plummeting earthwards. But Timothy the mouse says, don't worry, Dumbo, it isn't a magic feather. It's not magic at all. It's you. You can do it. Trust in yourself. Do it. Swoops down and swoops back up again. Suddenly he's flying. I don't need to explain the metaphysics of that. You will understand that. But if we think about Timothy, Timothy gave love. Dumbo had faith in Timothy, and the innate strength that was in him is always there. Put those three things together and you've got courage. Courage. That's what Dumbo found, was courage. And of course, courage as Beth will well tell us, comes from the French word cœur, meaning heart. It's of the heart. This is directly analogous to what Jesus did when he rode into Jerusalem on that donkey. He had the courage to be. Dumbo suddenly had the courage to be who he was. He understood his truth and he flew. I think it's an amazing story. But if we turn to the Bible, of course, the story that epitomizes strength is Samson. Samson was a judge for 20 years. Interestingly, the Hebrew translation of the Bible would say chieftain rather than judge. And everyone knew he was the strongest person around, and he was a wonderful chieftain. But then he sort of, fell prey to the dark side. A woman came and found him. Delilah, we all know the story, cut his hair off and he lost his strength. Eventually, of course, it regrew and he pulled the building down at the end, which is when he died. But the point of the story was that he lost his way, he lost his ideals, he lost his connection with God, and so he lost his strength. The strength wasn't in him, the strength was what came through him. But probably the greatest story of strength in the Bible is David and Goliath. Goliath metaphysically means a domineering idea. So he was just this big pompous, come on, I'm the big Philistine, you Jews come out and fight me if you dare. And typically, of course, he did it for 40 days. It's always 40 in the Bible. And David was a shepherd boy. He was Jesse's son. He was off in the field looking after his dad's sheep, fighting off lions and bears or whatever else came along. And anyway, Jesse, his dad, turned around and said, look, your brothers have all gone off to fight in the war with Saul. Best you pop down there, take them some sandwiches and come back and tell me how they're getting on. So he turns up and he sees this big Goliath sort of traipsing around, saying all these horrible things against the Jews. And so he goes up to Saul and says, look, I can do this. I can take on Goliath. And of course they laughed at him. No, look, God is with me. And believe me, I've killed lions, I've killed bears, defending my father's sheep. You can trust me with this. And of course, metaphysically, sheep are ideas. He trusted in his truth. And so, of course, the first thing Saul did, well, if you're going to go do it, have my armor. Puts on his armor. And you can just imagine this little lad David sort of collapsing in a big heap because, he couldn't support the weight of the armor. It just dragged him down. The material, the things we think we are when we're relying on ourselves, drags us down. So he threw it all away. Went off with his sling and his stone, as we know, one flick of his wrist and straight into Goliath's forehead, and no more Goliath. David found the truth of who he was. He had his connection with God and he found his truth. So through his truth, he defeated that domineering idea represented by Goliath. So what is strength? Well, we talk in Unity about the 12 powers. Strength is one of them. But generally we talk about it as perseverance. And in 1953, which is a wonderful year, I know Nancy will agree that 1953 was a wonderful year. There was a product developed in the US, which you've probably all heard of, Peter certainly will have heard of, called WD-40. The WD stands for water dispersant. We've all used it when the car won't start, or we want to get to free off a nut and bolt. The 40 represents the 40 goes they had at getting it right. Actually, Edison did a lot more with the light bulb, but it's all strength then is about perseverance. And the challenge with strength is you can have low strength, in which case you lack self-confidence. Oh my goodness, can I do this? Or you can have overly high strength, like Goliath with this domineering idea. And it makes one inflexible and arrogant. So strength is a kind of a double-edged sword. Without it, nothing happens, but too much of it, and you're likely to meet your downfall. And of course, it can be improved. It's one of those things we can grow through our spiritual practice, through our experience, through our meditation. But it needs balance. In strength, we need balance. Beth did a wonderful talk on this not so long ago about how important balance in life is. And it reminded me of a story when I was probably 19. My first year away at university, I went to university in Glasgow, and my parents lived. My home was in Taunton in Somerset. And I think it must have been the start of the summer holiday, because at the start of the summer holidays, you had to take all your stuff out of your room because they were letting the rooms out for other things. So I had my school trunk. I don't remember school trunks. They were quite long and they had the sort of wooden hoops around, you know, those big heavy trunks, plus a suitcase. Do you remember the expandable suitcases? Yeah. So I got back to Taunton, got off the train, and I was a young, fit lad. During the holidays, I worked on building sites. You know, I was strong. So from the station in Taunton down to the underpass to get under the railway lines, there's 2 flights of probably about 15, 20 steps each, these big stone steps. Undaunted, I picked up the trunk, put it on my shoulder, I picked up the suitcase in my other hand, and off I went down these steps. And with every step, I got shorter as it slowly scrunched me down. By the time I got to the bottom, I was completely out of balance and just had to drop the whole bloody lot. But anyway, so balance is so important. And it might be a little bit of a rabbit hole, but one of the things we do, or we did during our training to become licensed Unity teachers, we went through a thing called Strengths Finder. It's a little sort of test you do to see what your strengths are. And what those are isn't the point. It starts out in the introduction saying there's this misunderstanding is that we can do anything. We have access to all power, but actually being able to literally do anything in this world isn't the point. And it finishes up with this wonderful sentence. You cannot be anything you want to be, but you can be a lot more of who you already are. You can be a lot more of who you already are as you gain that strength, as you get that access to the power, as it flows through from God, you can be more of who you already are. So let's go back to that message. God is our strength. But remember, it's a double-edged sword, so use it wisely.
So we are going to close now with our closing prayer, which is the prayer for protection with the I am statements that reflect God speaking in us and as us. And after that, we will go straight into the peace song. And this week, we are delighted to share with you a recording of Dorothy Kirkman, our lovely Maidenhead pianist, playing the piano as she used to do for the local children's choir, where she taught the children. It was the Orchard Singers Cable House School Children's Choir, and they are singing the peace song. And so we will be playing that to end our service together, and then we'll come back to the screen and bless each other with our lovely goodbyes. So for now, let us get centered and still once more and speak the prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. I am light. The love of God enfolds us. I am love. The power of God protects us. I am power. The presence of God watches over us. I am presence. Wherever we are, God is. I am divine. And we will follow with our peace song. Thank you, Paul.
Let
wonderful, stirring way to bring our service to a close. Thank you so much for joining. I'm just going to take to gallery view the screen now, and I will invite you all, if you'd wish to unmute, to please do so that we can all say goodbye. And thank you so much. I pray that you've had a wonderful time this afternoon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Lovely.
thank
Thank you,
you.
Mercy. Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
so much,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank everyone.
Thank you,
Have a
Hannah.
blessed afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye
Thank
now.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Beautiful
Bye-bye.
service. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good afternoon.
Bye.
Good afternoon. Thank
Good
you.
afternoon. Bye.
Bye. It's lovely to see you.